that we've done with College of the Canyons. I'd like to recognize a few folks in the audience before we get started, however. First, in the back of the room, Bruce Fortine, President of the Board of Trustees for College of the Canyon. I believe Marcia McLean's going to be joining us, but I don't see her in the audience quite yet. I'd also like to recognize a co-owner of the Signal, standing in the back of the room, the handsome gentleman with the silver hair, Russ Briley, as he turns around looking for a handsome gentleman. And very special guests and special friends of the Signal, one of the former owners, Mr. and Mrs. Tony Newhall, are in the audience with us this evening. Marina, Tony, thank you so very much for being here this evening and for all that you've done for this community over the last 50 years. We'd like to also thank Dr. Van Hook and a gentleman standing in the back of the room, Mr. Eric Harnish, for without their help, as I mentioned last time I stood here, these events couldn't be held in a nicer forum, and the work and effort that both Dr. Van Hook and Eric has given to the Signal in this regard is very much appreciated. We'd also like to thank a couple of sponsors real quickly, and that's Nothing But Bundt Cakes. Thank you very much. Are you in the audience with us this evening? Starbucks Coffee, Chick-fil-A, and A1 Party for the contributions to the events and the refreshments you're enjoying this evening. We would prefer to have conducted several additional debates, specifically one for the 21st California senatorial race, featuring Assemblyman Scott Wilk and aerospace engineer Jonathan Irwin, and one for the 25th U.S. congressional seat, offering you a choice between Congressman Steve Knight and L.A. business attorney Brian Calforia. And contrary to some reports, our inability to schedule these debates were no fault of any one single candidate. And as the Signal rebuilds its operational capacity, it's our ardent hope we'll be able to offer debates for all races that are local in nature during the next cycle. It's important to note that over the next 4 weeks, we will be endorsing candidates in all local races and offering our opinions on all ballot measures. Furthermore, we'll be publishing a comprehensive voter's guide prior to the election that will be a compilation of all the other previously printed material and additional pertinent information that you may need to make a choice. We appreciate your attendance this evening, along with our online audience. And as previously stated, our journalists are charged with asking questions that will illuminate the positions of these candidates, and that information help you draw the distinctions that are necessary to make an informed decision. Before we get started, I'd like to explain the selection of the candidates here tonight. We wanted and want a lively debate with depth to the answers. But out of respect to our audience and our venue hosts, we didn't want it to go on for over 4 hours. Accordingly, of the 11 candidates who signed up to run for City Council this cycle, we selected the 5 who filed the required and recommended forms with the city, including Form 460 that lays out funds raised, and names of the campaign committee. However, in the interest of fairness, the Signal today published a special section in which 11 candidates were asked to answer several questions on the issues important to our city. 9 of the candidates responded, and their answers on the publication that has been made available to you here this evening. Candidates who are not here this evening also were asked to respond to the questions that will be asked here tonight, and those responses will be in the Signal tomorrow. Posing questions tonight will be Lila Littlejohn, opinion editor of the Signal, and Martha Michael, editor of the Santa Clarita Gazette. This debate is scheduled for an hour and a half, and the rules of the debates have been sent to the candidates in advance. These rules are printed on the back of your brochure, and I would strongly urge the participants tonight to respect those rules. In a world where self-restraint is in short supply, please show those watching or attending tonight that civility is still alive and well here in Santa Clarita Valley. The timekeeper this evening is Sue Springer, of the Signal. She will be seated with our 2 journalists, and my apologies to the audience for our questioners showing you their backs during the debate, but they will allow the candidate to both address them and you concurrently, and keeping their eye on the clock as they do it to ensure that their answers are kept to the time allotted. My job is to maintain some sort of order. Being a single father of 5 daughters and doing Sunday night dinners, I've got some experience in that. So let's meet the candidates. Seated alphabetically left to right are candidates Tim Bed-Boydston, Alan Ferdman, Bob Keller, Cameron Smythe, and Mark White. Gentlemen, a 3-minute opening statement, if you please. Mr. Boydston, will you begin?
Thank you, Mr. Champion. Are we hearing me on the mic? Check 2. Check. There we go. Sorry. I would like to thank Chuck Champion and Russ Briley and the Signal newspaper for this opportunity. I'm kind of fond of our local paper, having first appeared there when I was in the 4th grade and I was playing Wally in Our Town, the play at Sulphur Springs Elementary School. And at the time they said in the little article they wrote with it that there are some big things for this little guy, and something to that effect. I'm not sure that they meant this. However, I am gratified to be here. I'd like to thank Diane Van Hook, the Board of Trustees and College of the Canyons for providing this great venue. I mean, is this not our college at its finest? Some of my accomplishments that I have done as your city councilman over the last 4 years. I led the fight successfully against digital billboards and open space, deep well injection, red light cameras, the rain tax, and the conference center boondoggle. Some of the things I fought for in the last 4 years: Arts Master Plan, the mobile home ordinance, which protects our senior citizens especially and those on fixed incomes. I worked really hard to bring new roads to Santa Clarita because our traffic is a horrible mess and it's getting worse. And so I'm very excited that we are spending some funds on some road designs for major roads going across the valley. As I promised in my campaign, we are building a new sheriff's station in the center of the valley to help our sheriffs out. A senior center, which is going to be much bigger, also in the center of the valley. We're also working on building the Canyon Country Community Center, the Saugus Library Community Space. Some of the things I continue to fight against, which are very important to our citizens. I fight against the high-speed rail, corporate welfare, the chloride scam, Whitaker-Burmite contaminated land, and the CMEX mine. And I also continue to fight for increasing our clean water supply, more new roads, and more resources for our law enforcement, improved infrastructure, while approving more housing that makes sense in the fact that it's low density, so that we don't overburden our infrastructure. That is critical to Santa Clarita because we do not want to turn into the San Fernando Valley. And if we don't pay attention to the direction we're going, that's exactly where we're going to be. Anyone who has lived here for a few years knows this, and they know my fights with regard to this. I'm an independent candidate. I'm not afraid to speak my mind. My most important thing is to serve you. And if I see something I think that is best for the citizens, you can be sure that I will go for that and vote for you, even if it means voting against the other members of the council, because you are the most important thing in this room and in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferdman.
Okay, I would also like to start by thanking, you can't hear?
Move it really close. You might have to lean in.
How about now? That works? Okay. All right, I would also like to thank the Signal for providing this opportunity and all of you for taking the time to attend. My name is Alan Ferdman, and I am a long-term Santa Clarita resident. With my lovely wife of 53 years, Pamela, why don't you raise your hand so everybody you're here? I have lived in Santa Clarita for almost my entire married life. We have 2 grown children and 5 grandchildren. And with my wonderful mother of 95 years, why don't you raise your hand and show them that you're here too? To our 7-year-old grandchild, our family represents 4 generations living in our city. That alone constantly reminds me of all the different age groups that we need to recognize and provide for. This is our home, we love our community, and we have never wanted to live anywhere else. We originally moved into a very rural community, but today Santa Clarita has grown to the 3rd largest city in LA County. And with big city growth comes some big city issues. I believe Santa Clarita is at a very critical crossroad. Our residents are currently subjected to crushing traffic, rising crime rates including domestic violence and drug abuse, a growing homelessness problem, and a shortage of all types of infrastructure. Recently, we were even made aware of a $500,000 theft at City Hall with outside auditors chiding us for undocumented and lax procedures. This is not conducive to a healthy city future. We can continue down that same old path and wait for gridlock, or we can take the high road to improve our daily lives. Now, I believe in our community, and I know we can turn the situation around. In order to do so, we have to recognize when a problem exists. Then we can bring the city resources, businesses, and residents together so we can fix what's broken and move forward. I bring experiences in large-scale business systems development and management of multiple projects and large departments. But to gain a working knowledge of our city, I have been a regular attendee and participant at city council meetings for the last 5 years. I look to make Santa Clarita a city where my grandchildren and their children will still want to live. As your council member, I would work tirelessly to provide workable solutions for our everyday problems. I ask you to join me on a path to success. Vote Alan Ferdman, and together we can and we will make a positive difference right here in Santa Clarita. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferdinand. Mr. Keller.
Thank you. I want to express my appreciation to the Signal, and I must say, College of the Canyons, this is a beautiful setting, I will tell you, for an opportunity to have a forum. Thank you for that. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background. Folks, everybody is well written that I've been around for a day or two. Moved here in 1979 and have been pretty active in the community ever since. However, my service to communities and to my fellow man started back in the mid-'60s when I entered the Army in 1965. Upon my completion of the military, I became a Los Angeles police officer, where I subsequently served for 25 years. And I will tell you, as I look back, and I frequently will tell young people today, knowing what I know today, if I had to do it all over again, I would become a Los Angeles police officer, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I wrapped up my career on the department as the sergeant in charge of the Reserve Officer Training Program at the Los Angeles Police Academy by Dodger Stadium. Let's go back now to Santa Clarita. In the mid-'80s, I had a circumstance come about where I was made aware that the Chamber of Commerce, and I mean the Canyon Country Chamber, and a few of you in the room remember that, but they were looking for a little help with the Frontier Days program. And of course, I said yes when I was asked, but here was the thing that occurred. I met some of the most remarkable people. I had not the pleasure of meeting them or knowing them before. Connie Warden Roberts certainly comes to mind, and a long list of others, but I will tell you, I was so impressed. And it just, next thing I know, I'm involved more with the chamber. I remember Carl Goldman called me one day. He wrote me into getting in on the SCV Red Cross. I found myself on the board for the American Cancer Society in Santa Clarita. Also, I became a member of the board for the Santa Clarita Valley Veterans Memorial Committee and ultimately their president. So I became very, very heavily involved in the community, and each and every step of the way, I will tell you, I appreciated all the good folks all working so hard together as this community was developing and coming together. And this actually obviously was a little bit before we actually became a city, some of that. Having said that, my phone rang at about 1997, and it was a delightful lady on the other end of the line, our Mayor Joanne Darcy. And she asked me if I would consider being her appointment to the Planning Commission. I took that responsibility, even though I knew that it was a different step, completely different from anything of my previous involvement with the community. But I served there for approximately 3 years, And in the 2000 election, I was asked by some people if I would not consider that. I did sleep on it, but ultimately, obviously, I made the decision to run for city council. Folks, I will tell you, it's been an incredible journey. I can't say enough for what is going on in this city. I'm proud to have been able to serve on this city council for so long. I have not been a hands-on or a person who's sat on my hands. I've been a person that has been working very, very hard, and I shall continue to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Mr. Smythe?
Thank you, and I do want to offer my thanks to the Signal and College of the Canyons. Although I wish Chuck, you had told me it was a dark suit dress code for the candidates. Apparently, I didn't get
I
that
obviously
memo.
didn't get that memo either.
Well, this is a gift
And red tie.
and red tie. So but you know, as we talk about College of the Canyons as well, you know, it's a great place. My wife is a professor here, and I have a lot of great memories. Not just that I played my high school football games there, and if you want to see the videos, I can bring those out anytime. They're on my phone. I watch them all the time. And if you want to see those, I've got them. Or, you know, the fact that that's where, you know, my children, you know, now run track, and I coach there. But if you grew up here in Santa Clarita in the 80s or 90s, or you have kids, pretty much all of us learned to drive here at COC. Down at the lower stadium parking lot is where we all terrorized our parents trying to learn to drive for the first time. And so I appreciate having you know, the opportunity to be here. So I'm a little bit frazzled today. I got here a little bit later than I had wanted to because today is actually parent-teacher back-to-school night at my kids' elementary school. And so my wife is on the board at the PTA board there, so she has to be there to help set up and obviously stay throughout the whole program. So she's not here with me. And I thought, well, you know, why don't I bring my 7th grade son? I thought, you know, this would be a fun, you know, something for him to learn about. But he has soccer practice over at Central Park. And I thought, well, that's okay. Maybe I could invite my mom. You know, she bought me this suit. She'd like to see it, you know, I'm sure. But then, you know, our teammate that we usually carpool with was sick. So my mom has to go pick up my son at practice and bring him back and, you know, and stay with the rest of the kids until we're either done here or back to school night's over. And, you know, and I tell you that, you know, because that is really the life of most people that live in the city of Santa Clarita now. You know, 60% of our population is 45 and under, and that's a direct result of, you know, not just the families that have moved here over the years, but, you know, those of us that grew up here in Santa Clarita and chose to stay here and raise our family. And so it's important that we have at least one member of the city council who can offer the perspective of a majority of the residents in this city. I'm the only candidate, not just here, but all 11 candidates, and even including the current city council members who have kids in elementary school or even junior high school. So as you're making decisions for the future of the city, it's important that someone can provide a perspective that represents a majority of the city. I am that person, and I am that candidate.
Thank you, Cameron. Mr. White?
Well, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I'm Mark White, and this is my first attempt into political life here in Santa Clarita. I grew up here. Family moved out here in 1964. We only got 3 generations, not 4. Graduated high school in '79 when you got here, Bob. So, and my kids are already grown and gone through all the schools, Cameron. So, I grew up out here, Canyon Country, went to school out here. It was a fantastic small town to live in. You just could ride your bikes. You learned to drive the cars on the open roads. COC wasn't built then. My older brothers were driving. And then I bought my first house in Newhall when I was 19 years old, and I fell in love with real estate. Subsequently lived in Saugus, and now currently live in Valencia. I think I'm the only one that's lived in all 4 communities in this valley. I'm not sure about that, but I think so. So I have a perspective that sees all different areas of this community. Business-wise, I've been a mortgage banker for going on 31 years. In that capacity, we see all aspects of people's finances, research the qualifications, make determinations, the decisions to approve loans, but sometimes you have to make a tough decision not to do it. And that's probably the hardest part of the job, because you could be quashing somebody's dreams. But what you end up doing is actually helping people and making sure that they don't get in over their heads. Having been successful for 31 years at that, I pride myself on my financial analysis, due diligence, research, and then ultimately being willing to make a decision. And I forgot to thank everybody. I'll just say ditto to all the thanks, so we don't take up time thanking everybody, but I agree with that. Thank you, everybody, for participating in this. Met my wife here, married 26 years. She's out there in the audience. Very happy to have my mom in the audience, as well as my mother-in-law, who's a fantastic mother-in-law. Lucky to say that. Sister, family, and friends out there as well. I look forward to bringing a fresh perspective to the City Council. A couple things I'm really aggressively in favor of is expanding the city into one valley. Most people don't know, I did an interview with the press the other day, and they weren't aware that before we became a city, we tried to become Canyon County. And the idea was, prior to cityhood, is become one city and control everything inside what are now our limits and outside our limits. So if elected, that'll be a top priority. It's in the handout you guys have there. They asked for your top priority. My top priority would be to annex everything that's not in the city in the unincorporated area with the support and of the people if they want to be. And I think it's the city's job to do that. Other than that, I look forward to a spirited debate with these fine gentlemen up here, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. I think we'll start with Mr. Ferdman with the first question, Lila. And then again, each one of you will have an opportunity to answer the question. And then I'll call on some of you to respond if appropriate.
Okay, all of you know that one of the biggest complaints in this valley is traffic. So we're going to ask each of you, do you have...
Can you speak up? Maybe move the microphone closer.
Okay. Traffic. Everyone's favorite topic. Okay. So our question for you tonight is, do you have a plan for relieving traffic in the valley? What is it, and how would you have it funded? Mr.
Well,
Ferdman.
I'm glad you asked that question, okay, because it is a very, very important issue here in Santa Clarita. And most people sit in traffic. It takes time out of their daily lives. It's a public safety issue because it can take more time for first responders to get to us. But yes, I have a three-phased approach that I believe that we can take to help us relieve traffic. The very first thing in the short term I would like to see done is I would like to see us institute a program, a plan, and some yearly funding to provide bus egresses to keep those buses from stopping in the middle of the street and making very busy 3-lane roads very busy 2-lane roads. Second, I know the city's already started to do this, but I'd like to see them expand in looking at problem intersections and extending the left turn lanes so that we can get left turners out of the flow of traffic. In a little bit of a longer term issue, I think we really need to go and expedite completion of the Burmite cleanup so that we can build those additional roads that we need through the valley. There are some extremely important roads that would parallel Soledad, would take us south to Newhall and across the valley, and would take a lot of burden off of the center of our city. And lastly, we need to go back and visit the general plan. In 2011, when Mr. Keller and the City Council voted to approve One Valley, One Vision, it turned around and it increased density within the city, and it reduced traffic expectations from free-flowing to cause delays, and anticipated that traffic lights could not be synchronized. I don't think that we can expect our traffic problem to be resolved until we change our development standards so that they require developers to provide all of the necessary infrastructure for the developments they provide. Thank you.
I certainly agree with Ellen on a couple of those things. The Whitaker-Burmite is very important roadway opportunities there for us, ladies and gentlemen. And it's in the design phase as we speak, but I will tell you, the cleanup of Whitaker-Burmite has been so problematic because it actually is the governing body. The body that really determines how fast it's going to go is the Department of Toxic Substance Control. It's a state agency out of Sacramento. But I will tell you, we have been doing all we can to help facilitate that process and to get that property cleaned up. And projections are now that we will probably have a clean bill of health up there to move forward in 2017, and I'm very pleased to pass that on to you. How we're going to expand our roads and improve, it's an ongoing challenge, absolutely. We thought that the Cross Valley Connector, that was going to be it. That $245 million road, it was going to open up everything. And you know what? It helped. It helped, but it sure didn't this morning when I went from Canyon Country to Valencia to attend a meeting, because I'll tell you, it took me 35 minutes. Traffic was horrendous. And clearly, we have got to engage more and resolve some of these. I do believe that we could probably do a better, more effective job of working with our law enforcement organization and helping to get their assistance in expediting traffic at intersections and so forth when we're in those problem hours. Also, and it's one for you to decide, do we or do we not support Measure M, that half-cent sales tax? It's going to be on the ballot in November, specifically for purposes of more roadway funding. I am still, I will openly tell you, I'm working on that one in my own thought process as to whether or not we have paid so much in taxes, and I just hate to see a continuation of that. But also, we do need to make sure that our citizens have the availability to get from point A to point B. It's critically important to our quality of life. Thank you.
You know, I think one of the first things we can do, and relatively inexpensive, is make sure that our traffic signals are synchronized. I think that I know the city will try to do that, and we'll say that that's ongoing. But if you're on Lyons Avenue, pretty much any time of day, those lights are not synchronized, and that's one of our major thoroughfares. So I think that's something that we should address immediately. Really doesn't cost anything more than the staff time that they're putting in, and I would dramatically increase the flow. I think we need to look at also bringing more jobs here into the valley and here into the city. When people are living up in Saugus and they've got to drive all the way, one way or another to get to either the 14 or to the 5, if they can have a job that's much closer, that shortens their commute, shortens their time on the roads, and provides some relief as well. And and all of that too, this is a little tangent, but that all goes to our air quality as well. Santa Clarita suffers from tough air quality because of our location, and cars perform much better. They're much more efficient when they're moving, when they're not idling. So if we can keep the traffic flow going, that will also improve our air quality. And certainly, it doesn't discount what has already been said about the need to build more roads as the Whitaker-Burmite gets finally gets cleaned up. We need to leverage as many federal dollars, federal highway dollars that we can. Take advantage of the fact that our congressman is part of the majority, and leverage that experience and be able to use that to bring more of those federal dollars here to continue to construct our roads. And if we do that, it's certainly not a panacea and going to solve everything, but that definitely improves from where we are today.
Thank you. Mr. White?
So the question's on traffic, and I remember when Soledad Canyon Road was a 2-lane highway, and we used to drive from Canyon Country to OLPH for church, and then we got to go to Thrifty's Ice Cream after.
Heck yeah.
And it was great, but now Soledad Canyon Road's a 6-lane highway, and I don't think it can be made 8 lanes unless you go into the wash or the railroad track. Most of the developed area in this valley is at its capacity. And when you look at traffic, there's 2 things that have to be happening. Synchronized lights, yes, there are things you could do. Longer medians, those are small things that will make a little difference. But in the big picture, the only way you're going to build roads is funding. And most funding for roads comes from taxes on new home builders, as well as the other taxes that we pay a lot of taxes. So you're going to have to look at when they build the new homes, those people are a lot of them are in the areas outside of the city, and they come into the city and they impact the city. So if we annex these areas aggressively, we may have more say in what gets developed outside of the city. There's a development right now on Pico Canyon Road, 70 homes. It was just announced today that there's complaints against it. Scope and a couple other organizations are against any building. If you stop all building, you're going to stop growth. The city is growing. I made an analogy the other day to somebody. I said, we're probably like an unruly teenager right now. I'm not going to make the baby comment you made, Bob. But we're probably like an unruly teenager, and we're either at a point where we're going to grow into a mature, well-rounded adult with good roads, good traffic, or we might go down a path which we don't want, nobody wants, is the San Fernando Valley and gridlock. So you just have to take a really comprehensive approach at it. You have to look at the funding. You have to have influence on the areas outside of the city, because I don't think we can make McBean Parkway any wider. I don't think we make Bouquet Canyon any wider. And if you put more cars in that road, you're going to have gridlock. Thank you.
Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Champion. Yes, I wanted to mention something very briefly, and that is that the city of Santa Clarita at this time changes the timing and synchronizing on about 1/3 of our traffic lights every single year. We could do that more, and we do it at your request. So if you know a specific problem, please send it in. Those who know how traffic light synchronization works knows that we don't have a straight grid, so it's difficult. You can do them in one direction, but then you mess it up in the other direction. So it's not an easy fix, but it's an easy thing to say that it's an easy fix. But we're doing it, and we're doing it because if you can achieve that, it's the easiest fix, much less expensive than building roads. The problem is, when we did One Valley, One Vision, the council, I wasn't on it at the time, I fought it very hard. They refused to do peak hour traffic studies. They went ahead and voted to say that we should put twice as many people in this valley, 500,000, without providing twice as many roads. I have asked several times since. They refuse to do peak hour traffic studies. That's because they don't want you to know how bad it's going to get at peak hours. You're getting a little taste of that now that the recession is over. It's going to get far worse as they build houses that have already been approved. What we need to do is we need to build roads, and we need to build them as fast as possible. I was proud of my fellow council people in agreeing this time when I was pushing very hard to get the road designed at Via Princesa, one of your major cross-valley connectors in the other direction. So the EIR was done, so we moved to the next stage. I wanted to get the EIR for the last section that goes down to Wiley Canyon. We should do that. We didn't get that. Where do we get the funds for this? I don't think Measure M is the answer. Measure M is going to put some cities over 10%. I mean, even God only wants 10%, and the government wants more than that. It's just crazy. If we're going to have extra money that way, we should raise it here and spend it here. Thank you.
Are we going to have any rebuttal?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, before we go any further, will you please address the issue of the council's unwillingness to go into peak traffic, if you have a position or an opinion on that? Studies.
Well, I do not completely concur. I can tell you over the years I've participated and observed and read so many traffic studies that are worked on both by the county and the city of Santa Clarita to try and get maximum efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a tremendous city here, and it's why people love to come to Santa Clarita. And after they come here, even with a few of our headaches, they say, what a wonderful place. And if what it's done is made an extra challenge for all of us to work through these issues of growth, and it's happened very, very quickly, of course. But these issues have to continually be addressed to get the maximum outcome for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha, the next question, please.
It's fitting to begin with you, Mr. Keller, because it's about law enforcement.
Never heard of it.
Do you believe we need more sheriff's patrols on the streets? And if so, how, as a council member, do you choose to do that?
Okay. The answer is law enforcement, public safety, guys, it's got to be one of the absolute top issues in our community. We fall apart from when it comes to crime. I'm telling you, we're in trouble. This city can turn around and start becoming less desirable to be a place to call home. So with that in mind, I will tell you, I always have supported the expansion of our law enforcement services here in Santa Clarita. Presently, our contract is about $23 million a year. I can remember just a few years ago when it was around 16, 17 million. But that is because we have engaged a lot more law enforcement, where you've tried to bring in motor officers and do a variety of things to maximize safety and traffic flow and all of the things that you're responsible for with your law enforcement organization. I'm very proud of the work that the LA County Sheriffs do for us, ladies and gentlemen. I will tell you that the cost of law enforcement at what we're paying today for what we're getting, it would be at least double if we decided to create our own law enforcement agency and call it the Santa Clarita Police Department. Financially, it does not make sense. I'm very proud, and we need to continue to work very closely with the LA County Sheriffs in maximizing our resources and ensuring that we continue to keep this city safe. Thank you.
I have a quick follow-up for Mr. Keller.
Sure.
One time you mentioned to me the peril of gangs growing in the area, and can you comment on that? Is that your thought in regard to if we could only have our own police force, we could tackle that? What do you have? Thoughts
If
on that?
anything, if we had our own police force, we would not be able to as effectively deal with it as we can today, because the LA County Sheriffs have specialized units that come into our area and do nothing but focus on gang problems. It's a terrible, terrible culture in our community. And unfortunately, it's clear across America, in every corner of America. How unfortunate. But it is something that we must, and we have been, and we shall continue to address with as much vigor as we can to stop the gang problems that we have here in Santa Clarita. And guys, I gotta tell you, if you think we have gang problems, and I'm not trying to make light of it, go south of into the valley. And then we'll talk about gang problems. So I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just saying we're doing a pretty darn good job, but we've got to keep our nose to the grind wheel on this.
Please.
When I was in the legislature, one of the things that I always bragged about Santa Clarita to my fellow members was the fact that the city would spend more money on its parks and rec programs than it did on law enforcement, and yet remained one of the safest cities in the country. And I think that's something that we should absolutely continue to take pride in. But our community is changing. Obviously we're not just the population growth, but just kind of the nature of the change. One of the biggest concerns we have now is with Sacramento and Governor Brown, forcing or early releasing prisoners into our communities before their sentence has been up for, quote, nonviolent actions, and yet you've seen a spike in crime. In fact, I think our local law enforcement mentioned that in an article recently, that is a contributing factor. Our patrols have remained somewhat stagnant. Our patrol units since 2000, despite the population growth that we've seen. And so the nature has changed. And so I think, yes, to directly answer your question, we probably do need to look at increasing patrols. But we also, again, need to talk about what are they patrolling, how are they patrolling, and I think something that's super important to me as a parent with kids getting ready to go into junior high and high school is the prevalence of hard drugs here in our community. If you talk to law enforcement, physicians, teachers, even the students, they'll tell you it's very easy. And it's something that we need to address. It's great that we can call ourselves Awesome Town, and it's wonderful branding. So maybe we don't want to acknowledge that there are these problems, but it doesn't make us any less awesome to say, you know what, we have too many kids ending up in the ER on the weekend because of drug overdoses. Let's solve that problem, and then we can legitimately call ourselves Awesome Town.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. What would you, as a city council member, do to put more sheriff's patrols on the streets, or do you think we need that?
Thank you. One of the reasons this city is such a safe city, and I've seen it firsthand, is it's not just the sheriffs that live out here. It's LAPD, it's Pomona PD, it's Ventura PD. Many, many law enforcement officers from a variety of cities outside of Santa Clarita, or even sheriffs, live here. FBI, ATF, you name it. And they're invested in their neighborhoods. Bob mentioned that having our own police department is a double number, double what we pay. I've not seen a study, so I don't know if one's been done. But what I would advocate is to take a look at contracting versus having our own and see if there's a cost benefit. Just anytime you do something, you look at it and you say, is it going to cost more, or are we going to get more bang for our buck? Are we going to have more control over it? And not control, but more, and I was talking to a retired LAPD detective, and he said that in his experience, when the police departments have their own cities, the people that are in in the force tend to be more vested in the community. So, and I do lots of loans for people for the sheriffs, and they're great. I'm taking nothing away from the sheriffs. I don't want it misreported that I have anything wrong with the sheriffs. They're fantastic. But that comment made me think, it's like, okay, well, we should at least look at it. And if we determine there's a cost benefit, whether it's pensions or construction, and the $15 million we just agreed to pay if we change, should be looked at, we put it to a vote of the people and say, okay, it may cost more. Do you guys want it? And here's the study, here's the facts, here's the data. And if it turns out that it's cost prohibitive, then we continue negotiating contracts and do it. But I think it should be looked at, and that's my opinion on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Boydson.
Yes, Mr. Champion, thank you. First, let me say that without law enforcement, of course, we don't have a society, and that's how critical it is. After having enough to eat and clothes and a roof over your head, it's your safety. And the sheriffs have done an incredibly good job over the years in our valley in maintaining that. And the citizens, which are just, well, it's actually a bigger component, because the citizens have supported the sheriffs, and the citizens of Santa Clarita support law abiding, and that's fabulous. But never forget that the guy goes out there with a badge and a gun, and you want him between you and the bad guy, and for that I have to thank the sheriffs. With regard to do we need more patrols, I think yes. I think we need to expend more funds for patrols because we have grown yet again. I will say that we have been able to be responsive. I know that when we were having some problems in the wash a year ago, 2 years ago, it was getting really bad in a couple of areas. And I asked that the city manager and that the sheriff's department put some more time to gentlemen on a bicycle so that they could patrol down in there. And they did that, and it helped, and things got better. And that is one of the things that you can do by having local control of it. What I wish we would do is that we should create an ombudsman position at the city to interface with the captain, I think. Because I know some citizens have had some frustration getting to and through the bureaucracy. So I think if we did that, that would be a benefit for the citizens, so they'd have a person to go to get a little bit more directness to the captain. I think that would be an advantageous, and I think it's always good to look at a study, because everything that I've seen says it costs a lot more to have your own police force, and you don't get all of that infrastructure behind you. But yeah, it never hurts to do a study and see what it would cost.
Thank you, Council Member. Mr. Ferdinand.
Well, of course, public safety is always an important issue, and I want everybody to realize that the police department is only one part of it. I hope we have some later questions about fire and other areas of public safety. But in fact, we're the third largest city by population in the LA County area. But when we look at cities that are in some cases smaller than us, like Burbank, they spend almost 3 times the amount that we do for police services. And one way that we hold and we save money in our police department is by deciding what service we need to have stationed locally and what services we can call on from the rest of the county. So as an example, we don't have a crime lab here in Santa Clarita. We use the crime lab in other places from the county. And that's just one example. So when we look at what our services are, I think besides just saying we should just look at more deputies, we should look at what kind of deputies we need. What are the problems that we're seeing? How can we best mitigate those situations by being very careful in what we include in our contract? And in that way, we'll get the biggest bang from our buck. Now, you asked how we're going to pay for it? Well, last year, the general fund underran by $12 million. That underrun was put in something called the facilities fund and was reported in the year-end report. So if you want to know how we're going to pay for it, let's take some of that $12 million and let's get some more sheriff services here in Santa Clarita. Thank you.
Councilmember Tim Ben Boydston, as a follow-up question, in a number of cities in Ventura County sheriffs provide contracted services to cities. Agoura, parts of Agoura, Westlake Village, Moore Park, and Thousand Oaks, and in Riverside County, the sheriffs offer the same services to counties, or to cities. In those cities, the branding of the police cars, of the police officers, are in fact identified with a city and not with a county. And according to some of the officers I've talked to, they basically have a greater affinity than to protect and serve because they are wearing a uniform that says whatever the name of the city is on it, and they're driving around a patrol car that says Thousand Oaks Police. Why is it that here in Los Angeles County, we have police cars, admittedly, that say Santa Clarita, but the deputies look very much like LA County deputies and identifying with LA County? Is that something you've explored or something you're interested in seeing?
I would love to see that. That's a fabulous idea. I think that we need to have our police in our own uniforms and our own cars. And I think that we still get the structure of and the advantages of being a contract city because those things are very expensive, like what Ms. Ferdman was talking about, the crime lab and things like that. They're very expensive, but we could still get that back up. And I agree with you. I think it is a wonderful idea.
Okay. So, Lila, next
All right.
question.
The next question is about discord on the city council, and sometimes between the city council members and the audience. So do you think that discord on the council is constructive or destructive? And what do you think should be done about it, if anything? What would you want to do about it if you're elected council? Mr. Smythe.
Oh, could you use Discord in a sentence? Can I phone a friend? No, thank you. You know, I think people need to realize that, you know, it's okay to have disagreement, and it's okay to, you know, to battle and to have passion in your, you know, when you're serving. I can certainly tell you on numerous occasions that Councilmember Ferry and I, you know, we sat next to each other, you know, we went head to head on different issues, and you all know Mr. Ferry is a very calm individual during his time, and you know, but you have to let it go. And I think, you know, one of the words we use in the legislature was, you can't fall in love with your bill. And so you have to understand it's business. You fight for your cause, you know, and you fight passionately. But if you lose the vote, you know what, then you move on. And you know, Mr. Ferry and I, there was one issue where we fought heavily, and the very next issue, it was he and I against, you know, the mayor and a couple other council members, and that's okay. You know, but we need to move beyond, you know, the issues of kind of the pettiness that I think people see, and I think that you need to, you know, if we're going to be a big city, our council needs to act like like we're in a big city and not get bogged down in some of the minutia stuff, whether it be pay or titles or committee assignments. I don't care about any of that. You know, if I'm on the council, you can put me on whatever committee you want. I'll take, you know, my turn, you know, in the rotation as it is. You can pay me whatever it is that the council members make, even if it is less than what I would have made if I had stayed on the council because of the change. You know, we need to get beyond that and just focus on the issues. We have really serious issues in the city, and focus on that. But remember, it's okay to battle. You're going to disagree, and that's what you want of your elected officials. You don't want everybody to agree 100%. You want to have that debate to represent all different point of views. So it's okay, but let's focus, make sure that those fights and that discord is centered around the issues and not the minutia.
Thank you.
Discord.
Discord.
Great. I was a president of an HOA, 1,200 homeowners, and nothing got somebody upset when they couldn't paint their house a certain color, or they wanted their tree cut down in the backyard, and you had to make the decision. And we had a situation where the landscape maintenance district had refused for years and years and years before I got on the board to cut down these trees. These people paid for view lots, and most people out here may live in a homeowners association. Nobody goes to the meetings. We had 60 people at a homeowners meeting, which was a lot. And they were all wanting to chop down the trees and get their views back that they paid for. So we had the LMD gentleman come in, and it got pretty heated, but it was respectful. And what we ended up doing was hearing his point of saving the trees and balanced it against the homeowners who wanted their views back. And we made a motion, lot number whatever, whack the trees. Next lot, whack the trees. He asked for a timeout. We stopped. We convinced him to go back and work with the homeowners instead of just saying no. But we had to get tough to get him to do that. And I think that's something that when we analyze all the facts and you say, how are you going to get along? Sometimes you're going to disagree, and sometimes you have to take a stance, and sometimes you have to take a tough measure. But then you can pause, fix the problem, which we did. Everybody was happy. I am still friends with that gentleman. He was a nice guy. I said, I got 20 trees in my backyard. I love trees. But these people had a right to their view, and what we ended up doing was having a very heated discussion, solve the problem, and at the end of the day, everybody's fine. I see no reason to disrespect somebody that comes before the council. I have no reason to disrespect anybody here. Former council member shared with me that her surprise was some of the behind-the-scenes nastiness, and I would never participate in that. So we can all get along. Thank you.
Thank you. Council member.
Thank you, Mr. Champion. I have been called in the press as an independent or other names that would indicate that discord might be something that I deal with. And honestly, when I first came on the council, there was a lot of very heated back and forth between myself and other council people. And that had to do with respect for the citizens that came before the council. And one of my proudest achievements since I've been on the council this time has been that whereas before I came on the council members actually, some of them laughed at the people coming in front of them, rolled their eyes, and were totally disrespectful for the citizens in violation of their own rules. And that doesn't happen now. The council respects the citizens when they come to speak before us, and that's been one of the proudest things that I think that I've accomplished. As far as between the council people, yes, there's a lot of back and forth, but you have to understand that if it's 5-0, 5-0, 5-0 all the time, that's not a democracy. And this last year is kind of instructive, and it's probably very representative of my time on the council. Of all the items on the agenda in the last year, 97% of the time, I voted with the majority. But 3% of the time, yeah, that was important. That was 8 different votes. And I will tell you, those were important things. And yes, I felt that it was important for me to stand out and vote for them. And the other thing is it shouldn't be counted as discord when you have public discussion in front of the public, because that's what the public wants. And the questions that I ask, and I ask a lot of questions, and they lead to a little bit longer meeting, but those questions are asked by citizens. They come and ask me so that they can see the process. They want to know the answers to those things, and it gives us the opportunity to address them. So yes, very, very proud of council that's not afraid to talk about the issues, and council members that are not afraid to stand up and be 4-1 or 3-2. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferdinand.
Well, I think that is a very important issue, and it's a really good question. One of the things I see as being the issue is when we have people believe that what they're going to come to the city council as a council member and do is battle with one another. That's not what you're there for. You're there to solve problems. And I am a great believer in consensus decision making. And in a consensus decision, doesn't have to be your favorite method. It doesn't have to be the one that you are pushing as hard as you can. It just has to be a situation that solves the problem and you can support it. And when everybody in the group realizes that their opinion is important and that they can contribute to a consensus decision, you'll find that the group will get along far better and we'll make some great inroads in what we can accomplish. On the County Country Advisory Committee, for an example, we have Democrats, Republicans, Independents, we're all together, but we know that what we're there for is to talk about things that are important to the city. And when it comes to this city, we all want the same thing. We want a clean city, we want a safe city, we want a great place to live. And if we can just keep that in mind and at the same time reach our decisions by a consensus, I think you'll find that we'll have a city council and city council meetings that are going to be much more productive and much more fun to listen to. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Geller?
Well, it is a good question. I concur, and I think, for the most part, I agree with my fellow candidates up here. There is a factor or two that comes into play, ladies and gentlemen. We do have some very spirited discussions on occasion, absolutely, and we should. That's our point, is to be up there to discuss these matters. But we also have what we call the norms, protocols on how we conduct ourselves. And I got to tell you, we will get the best outcome at the back end if we will all respect and understand what those norms and protocols are. And one of the things that comes into play there is that when the vote is taken, the majority vote, is how we move forward. It doesn't mean that somebody that was on a dissenting vote that they don't have to go out there and cheer about it. But they are supposed to respect the vote. The vote has been made. It's now over, and we move forward, okay? And where we have circumstances where that something different than that occurs, yes, it causes a lot of difficulty at the dais in a variety of ways. So I just simply say, not a problem with our having disagreement. That's why we have a vote. That's why we have it 5 people on the council, an odd number. But the vote is the vote, and when it's made, we need to respect it, and we need to move on. Thank you.
Council member, would you like to respond to that? Because it might have been addressed to you in part.
Okay, well, here is my take on that. There have been a very limited number of times when I have moved forward as a private citizen, particularly on the billboard, digital billboard issue. I like to remind people that if it's done and there's no going back to anything, we would still have slavery and women would not have the right to vote in this country. Sometimes it's really, really important and it goes to your core value and you disagree. And so no, you never give up the right of freedom of speech, and no, you never give up the right if you think it's really important. And I thought the digital billboard was the worst deal that the city ever contemplated, that they were going to put these digital billboards in open space that we bought for open space, and they're going to be there for 50 years. It was a bad deal, and I would fight it again. Thank you.
Thank you. It would appear someone else is not off the hook yet. So go ahead, Lila.
Mr. Boyston, you said something earlier that suggested that you had convinced your fellow council members to stop being disrespectful to audience members. How did you do that?
2 of them are gone.
So the electorate did that.
The electorate, did that. I spent a lot of time saying, point of order, and I did that so much that now we actually allow each other to talk more. And so I think that as far as the respect toward the citizens, I think that is the electorate.
Okay, Mr. Ferdman, I have a follow-up question with you. Do you have experience with this consensus building?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Actually, for 13 years, started out with Rick Putnam and the city when we formed the Santa Clarita Adult Sports Committee. And we started out with 10 people that had extremely different views about how we should proceed with the adult softball program. And I pitched this idea of consensus decision-making, and they accepted it. And you know what? For a little bit of time, we really didn't get anything done until everybody realized that you were allowed to say no, you were allowed to pitch your own ideas, and people would be willing to accept things that weren't necessarily exactly the way they wanted it. Once that happened, we did very well, and we proceeded from that point without any problem.
Thank you.
So the next question.
Sue has enabled me to multitask here tonight. I get to do timer and questions. Okay, Mr. White, you brought up before your experience with finances, so this is perfect. Do you think there should be closer oversight of city finances and accounting practices by the city council? What would you propose?
That's a really good question, and the short answer, and I like short answers, is absolutely yes. The recent embezzlement that was alluded to earlier probably happened through what I would like to probably just call complacency. An organization like the City of Santa Clarita, about 30 years old, I think a top to bottom review of every policy, every regulation, every rule is long overdue. The things that might have made sense 30 years ago could not even be applicable, they might still be on the books. So one of the things, another thing I would champion besides annexation would be, let's look at all the guidelines and regulations, procedures and policies. And yes, take a very hands-on oversight position. I think that's part of the job of the city council, is to make sure things aren't slipping through the cracks. It just makes a lot of sense that you can't have guidelines from 30 years ago. I deal in the mortgage world, and we have a lot of guidelines. I mean, it's amazing. Anybody got a mortgage in the last few years, you know there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of dumb rules. But some of the rules are there and make sense, some are antiquated, and they've already started to change and phase back out the rules. So looking at all the rules, having definite oversight, I'd be a big fan of that.
Thank you. Mr. Boydston?
Can you give me the question one more time?
Sure. Do you think there should be closer oversight of city finances and accounting practices by the city council? What would you propose?
I absolutely believe that. And very disturbed about the fact that someone stole $500,000 of your money. And I apologize for that, because I voted for it, not knowing, of course, but I vote for all the checks. So that's my responsibility. I think that when we looked at the procedures, and I requested a lot of documents to look at the procedures, and there was an investigation done, and as many of you may know, I asked my fellow council people if I would be able to ask questions of the people who did that independent investigation, and they turned me down. And I don't know where to go to next. And it's very dismaying to me, because I need to get into the details of what went on, because I see real problems in the organization. There were some policies and procedures that were not followed. People signed off without proper documentation. I mean, you can read, it's online, 200 pages, but that was incredibly disturbing. One department over here has a set of rules and guidelines and procedures, and this other department, they don't mesh. In other words, this department, I've been told, doesn't have the same guidelines. So a check's sent over to be paid, and these people don't have the same requirement. This is ludicrous. What should the city be doing? The city should be having an oversight thing. When this was done, there should be an independent investigation. At least there should have been a report to the city council, us. We're supposed to be the oversight. There was no report to us where we could ask questions. There was only a written report. And so far, I am being stopped from asking more questions. So absolutely, there should be, and the city council should all participate in that. Thank you.
Absolutely. There should be oversight by the city council, because that's really their job. It should start with the budget, as the budget is presented every year. And the budget currently, if you look at it, all 247 pages of it, what you'll see is it is a department level summary. It really doesn't tell you how the money is going to be spent. And when we talked about the embezzlement at City Hall, the audit report came back and said we had undocumented procedures. We did not, we allowed a city staffer to take possession of checks meant for other companies. I mean, it was just a situation of lax procedures that was just asking for a problem to exist. So certainly I think we should do that. I think the auditors should report to the city council and should give their results at a city council meeting. I believe the chief financial officer should not report to the city manager, should report to the city council, just like in most corporations they do, so you can know that there's some independence of financial reporting. I believe there should be a full set of written procedures, and those written procedures should be self-audited throughout the year and reviewed so that we know that people are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. So there is a lot of things that we could do, and I think that we should do, so that the city council has a good handle on where we're spending our money and how the money is being handled in City Hall.
Mr. Geller.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hire a city manager, and we pay him a lot of money every year to oversee the operation of the city. And I will tell you, our city manager, Ken Striplin, with his doctorate degree, has done a phenomenal job for the citizens of Santa Clarita in every respect, including budgetary processing. I will tell you, and go into the part about law enforcement. Let me tell you, when you have a skunk out there and they decide they're going to put together a plan and take advantage and embezzle, you can have all of the processes and everything in the world. But I'm telling you, as long as we got mankind out there, sometime, somehow, they're going to figure out a way, and this guy did. But unfortunately, it was very, very embarrassing for the city. Of course, I tell you firsthand, our city manager was devastated, and all of the co-workers and so forth. But I will tell you, I will not be critical of them. We follow state law procedures. We do have auditing procedures in place. They take place on a routine basis. So to give the impression like that we don't do any audits and no oversight is just not accurate. The oversight is required by law, and it's an ongoing process. And to say that they're not biased because, or unbiased because they're outside because we're paying them, well, do you think somebody else is going to come along? You're going to write them a check too. Auditors get paid for what they do. And this city has done a very, very fine job of protecting all of our citizens' money. Have procedures been modified in this specific area? You better believe it has been. And of course they should be. But I will, once again, I'm going to tell you how unfortunate and how proud I am of our city staff. They do a remarkable job for the protection financially of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think anyone disputes the effort of a vast majority of our city staff and the work they do. I certainly see that firsthand, but the reality is the city blew it. And when I saw the story about the embezzlement, it really it was like a sucker punch kind of, because it's the first time that Santa Clarita kind of seemed like other cities across the state, with these issues. And so now it's time, okay, we found that, we addressed it somewhat. I'm not convinced that we've found everything there is to find, that number, that $500,000 could be going higher. I also think that, okay, if we're going to be a big city and we're going to be acting like it and starting to have some of these problems, I take a little bit of an issue that the only person so far who has been dealt with is the criminal who's been arrested. He wasn't a department head. Someone else had to, in the chain, had to sign off on these actions. And I get it. I agree that, it was a pretty detailed, scam. But this is our money. This is public money. And so if we're going to look at other ways, I agree, you can have all the norms and procedures, and if someone still wants to find a way, they certainly can do that. So maybe it's time that we look at other options. We're changing our election cycle now, right? We're now having an election in November instead of April. A lot of cities have their department heads directly elected. You have city treasurers, you have city clerks and recorders that are directly elected by the people. So maybe there's some accountability there if we want to look at that. And if you have a city treasurer, who is accountable to the people, and that's their job, and if they allow this to happen, they're going to lose their job. Maybe that's an additional incentive. Because until the city, takes a little bit stronger action, I'm not sure there's a lot of disincentive beyond just the one person who is going to go to jail, and rightfully so. But I think more should be done.
Mr. White.
I get an
He
answer
started.
twice?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chuck, you got to keep up.
Well, the question was, should the council have oversight? And the answer is yes.
Sorry.
Mr. Keller, do you want to respond to Mr. Boydson's complaint that he wasn't allowed to ask questions, or?
Yes, it's another violation of a city protocol. We do not go around the city manager and go out here and contact private companies on any issues and decide we're going to question them, and that is not an organized form of government. We will have complete chaos, complete breakdown. There will be no respect, and I will tell you, you just do not run an airline that way. You go to the city manager and you sit down with him and you talk about your concerns. And if he's not able to provide the satisfactory answer, then it's up to him to go ahead and get those satisfactory answers. The fact of the matter is, the report that was given on that incident was somewhere around 300 pages with about a 17 or 18 page summary. All of the questions that I heard were answered very thoroughly in that report. Nothing came down the pike that was different, that was not already covered. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to respond, if I may.
Please.
I have to disagree most strongly with the mayor. That our job is oversight, and honestly, you don't go to the city manager to ask him questions about. What you need to do is ask the people who did the investigation straight. The city manager had the problem in his organization. His employees stole the money. So we should have the opportunity to speak to them. And I wasn't going rogue or off on myself. I went to the city attorney and asked permission first, since the city attorney is the one who actually said, we're going to contract you. He contracted them along with the city manager, and they were going to run this investigation. I went to him and asked for permission to have, and asked them to tell him, have them answer my questions. And they said, no, you have to go get permission from the city council. So I went to the city council, and in the council meeting, I asked the mayor, I said, will the mayor come with me to ask these questions, or the mayor pro tem? And they refused. And I'm wondering, what are they hiding?
Excuse me, can I respond?
Please.
All right. Yeah, I think when we look at these kinds of things and we look at audits, and I come from a position of being an ISO certified auditor and spending a lot of time in aerospace doing the same thing, you need, when an audit occurs, especially because you're looking at a problem, you want to know what the problem was, what the root cause was, what you're going to do to fix the problem, and what you're going to do to correct the situation so it doesn't happen again. To turn around and say, we caught the guy, we arrested him, and now everything is wonderful, is half the job. If you don't go back and find out what happened and fix that problem, it's going to come back and bite you again.
Thank you, Mr. Ferdinand. Why don't we move on to the next question?
All right, the next question involves homelessness. In February, the county adopted a countywide homeless initiative that allows cities to buy in or out of elements that it identifies in order to deal with their individual issues of homelessness. The city council did not opt in initially. Do you believe that that would be a viable solution to at least some of the problems of homelessness in the city? Do you have a different plan for addressing the homelessness? And we are back to Mr. Boydston, I believe.
Thank you, Lila. Yes, the homelessness problem in Santa Clarita exists. It doesn't just impact people, and those of us who have lived in Santa Clarita for a long time, we're like, we don't have this before. These people are homeless. These are people on the street, and that's just not Santa Clarita that we see. But it's not new. It's all over the country. These people are here, and they didn't all come here from someplace else either. Some of these people went to school here. Some of these people were with families here, and for whatever reason, they're on the street now. This is a problem that needs to be dealt with. And it's not just impacting us like, oh, well, we have to spend money to take care of it. Yes, we're going to probably have to spend some resources, but you have to understand it's already impacting us. A lot of the homeless people are in the libraries, and we get complaint from the citizens, I can't get in the library, or my kids are there, and I'm afraid to take them to the Veterans Park because the homeless are everywhere. This is a problem we need to deal with. And I have asked the city council to put this on the agenda repeatedly, and they have refused, because it takes 3 council people, unlike most cities that I know, where a council person elected by the people, and people have a problem, they can put something on the city council, but not in Santa Clarita, no. You actually have to practically get the whole issue resolved to even get it on the council. You need 3 votes. I'm never able to get 3 votes to put the homeless issue on there. As far as the task force, I wanted the city of Santa Clarita to talk about where they wanted to be on that task force. I got a memo from the city manager telling the other council people it was going to cost us a bunch of money. The resolution doesn't say that. It doesn't cost you a penny. They have a whole bunch of different solutions, a whole bunch of things they're working on. What you do by being part of the coalition is getting information from other cities. You pick and choose what will work for Santa Clarita. But we need to fix this problem. It's a problem. It ain't going away. Okay, sticking our head in the sand and calling us Awesome Town is belied by the fact that our people sitting on our streets and panhandling in front of our stores and harassing people sometimes. This is a problem that needs to be fixed.
Thank you, council member. Mr. Ferdinand.
Well, I'm not going to repeat what Councilman Boyson said because I absolutely agree with what he said. We've turned around and we've, in some ways, tried to help resolve the problem. We have our temporary winter shelter, and also, based on state law, we determined a location for a permanent shelter. We have a permanent shelter overlay zone that was established with the same criteria that was used to site the temporary shelters. But no one has been able to come up with the money to build that shelter. So we have people that are out on the street. We have students that are out on the street that attend COC and they're homeless. And we really have very little to support them or to help them gain a footing to become regular, average, tax-paying, home-owning citizens. So if there is a place that we can go, if there is a group that we can combine our knowledge with and get ideas about how we can handle this situation, we absolutely should do it. You know, that it's amazing to think that we're the only people that can come up with a solution. We should do every bit of research we can to find out what the problem is and how, and all the different methods that there might be to solve it, and then we can really come together and build a solution. So I absolutely support joining in with the rest of that county coalition and finding out what we can do to help solve this problem.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, please.
Can't tell you the number of meetings and discussions we have had on the homeless over the years, folks. This is nothing new. And you know, to say, oh, we're going to fix the problem. With all due respects, what are you smoking? As long as mankind has been on the face of the earth, in every corner of the earth, we have this element, and it's a terribly unfortunate thing, but it still is our responsibility to do all we can to address the issue and minimize it as best we possibly can. You know, when I was a little younger, I remember the churches played a stronger role in this activity than what they do today, and I think, and I've also discussed with our city manager, putting our ministers together and see if we can't get them a little bit more active in that. There is no question that we have had a significant increase with the homelessness in Santa Clarita. It's across the nation, folks, and it's a very sad commentary, but there's a lot more issues on the table as to why we're having more homelessness today than other times. We are also bound by something. It's called follow the law. And if you think Sacramento hasn't made it loud and clear what you can and can't do going out here and dealing with homelessness, I'm telling you, folks, it's very clear. And the complaint about what's going on in our Veterans Plaza and the second floor of the library is absolutely true. I've been over to those locations and personally on more than one occasion and seen the issue. We didn't build a $30 million library to become a homeless shelter. But guess what? It's a public building. We have no right to have law enforcement go in there and push them out. And you can get frustrated with me if you choose, but those are the kinds of headaches that we are having to contend with. But I will tell you, we have not turned a blind eye on this. We will continue to do all that we can, working with the Bridge to Home folks, our churches, and the county, as we've worked on so many things. To say because we did not say yes to this specific issue with the county is not a fair statement that we haven't been working extremely hard on this, and I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
So, you know, I'd like to, you know, I'll be honest that, excuse me, I've had kind of a growth period with my position on homeless, and it really began to expand as we went through the recession, and you really saw, you know, the impact of people losing their jobs, losing their homes, and really how tenuous, you know, most of us are, you know, from being homeless. And it's not always a choice or mental illness or drug use. There are many factors, and, you know, and that's been said. And so I think, you know, it is absolutely, you know, it is here, you know, and Santa Clarita, you know, does have that problem, and it's growing. And because of you know, the constraints that have been put on, you know, local governments by the legislature and others, it does limit our ability to address it, and it kind of funnels us into how, you know, how Sacramento feels, you know, it should be addressed, or through, you know, through the county program. that Mr. Boydston alluded to. And, I don't think, I think there's value in having that discussion, of the county program, but it doesn't always have to be at a council meeting. We have, as I recall, the council has study sessions, for items that you discuss, prior to putting something on the council agenda. Because if you're going to put something on the council agenda, you're doing so because you're going to take action. Well, the issue of the homeless shelter and how we're going to tackle that, that is a multi-pronged, grinded out type of process. And I think, starting with a study session, is not a bad place. Instead of right off the bat starting, we're going to put this on the council agenda. Let's find another way, whether it be a committee process or a study session. But I agree, and I don't think anyone's going to say any different. This is an issue that is popped up in Santa Clarita, and it's one that affects many families, and we need to partner with as many people as we can to get it addressed.
Thank you. Now, Mr. White.
Now me, only one time. Ultimately, it's going to come down to funding, as most things do. If we had unlimited wealth and unlimited funding, there would be no homeless. Yet there would be. You can mitigate something, but I don't think you can eliminate it. So that being said, what I'm hearing, well, the regulations, Sacramento, and this and that, we're a smart city with a lot of smart people. We should figure out a way, not to break the law, but to take the funds that the city deems necessary and give it to the nonprofits. We have grant programs. Family Promise is a great organization. The veterans are building homes. There's a lot of things out here that we can do to reach out to those people. But some of the homeless want to be homeless. It's a fact. It's sad. I've had some personal experience with it, and it's really, really hard when you look at that kind of issue. Mental health, drugs, that contributes to it. And not all the homeless are from here. There are some, I'm sure, from here. But if we become a city that makes it attractive to homeless, and I know that's an argument that some people don't like to talk about, we could actually increase the homeless population. So I think the city finds a way to take our dollars and our resources and funnel it to the nonprofits, the churches, the volunteer organizations. There's so many out here. This city is great because of all the volunteers that put in countless hours for every project you can imagine. And I think together with leadership from the city, with funds from the city to these organizations, we can probably make a difference. Mitigate it. I don't think you're going to eliminate it, though.
Thank you very much. We're starting to run short on time, so I'm going to step in and ask one question and do it in a way much like an Oxford question, and that's simple yes or no, and why, and keep your answer limited to a minute. And the question is one of our last questions, and do you or do you not support annexation of further areas that are in the county into the city, like Castaic, Stevenson Ranch, or the like? So we'll start with you, Mr. Ben Boydston.
Thank you, Mr. Champion. Yes, I support it, provided, of course, that the citizens there want it, any section, and I don't believe LAFCO would allow us to do it any other way. And the reason is because this should all be one city here. Santa Clarita is geographically isolated, and just because people are living on the other side of the freeway, they get impacted here the same way. The chloride issue and the deep well injection that we killed was really instructive. And I worked with the people on that side because they were going to do a little bit here in Valencia, but most of it was on the other side. And really, what we do is we affect one another. They spend their tax dollars on our side, in our city, which we appreciate, and sometimes we go on that side. Really, we need to take all the resources, taxes that are coming in, and spend them all in this valley, because there's a lot of problems on that side that need to be addressed. People say, well, what about Castaic? Well, yes, of course, bring Castaic in. Val Verde, all the way down to the end of our geographic area. We should be part of that.
Mr. Ferdman?
Well, I agree. I would like to see annexation of the surrounding areas out to the end of our geographic location. But in order to do that, we are going to have to show individuals that live in those areas that they're going to be supported. And right now, especially with the flavor of the deep well injection discussions that drove the Stevenson Ranch folks into up in arms, and some of the other things that are going on. We're talking about a landfill expansion that's going to come to the edge of our city. We're going to have to find a way that we will convince those individuals living in those other areas, and that could very well be by an expansion of the council and by having individuals on the council specifically represent those areas so they know that their voices are going to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Keller?
The original plan for the city of Santa Clarita in 1987 was for 93 square miles. LAFCO approved about 37 square miles. Since that time, we've had well over 30 annexations, ladies and gentlemen. This city has grown significantly, obviously, and as you've been told many times, the third largest in LA County. The truth of the matter is we've done a remarkable job. We have protected our citizens, and at the same time, we have been able to accomplish great improvements, and nobody has ever come back and said we regret having become part of the city of Santa Clarita. Before we jump out there and take, though, like you specifically said, Castaic, folks, we've had our engineers out there, and they've looked at and made assessments of the infrastructure out there. It would be ill-advised to kick in all of Castaic. We would be cleaning our clock financially trying to get the standards up. So the answer on that, bite size. Take it in bite size. That's not trying to take anything away from people. I'm not trying to cherry pick. I'm just simply saying, do not bankrupt, don't kill the golden goose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I agree. Specifically, though, we have to make sure that there is it makes fiscal sense. You know, in previous years, we've talked with the county about annexation, and they've been more than happy, sure, take all the residents you want. Oh, but no, you're not going to get the marketplace. You're not going to have Magic Mountain. You're not going to have the tax base there that is necessary to support that. But I think we have a tremendous opportunity. I mean, for the first time since 1980, Mike Antonovich isn't the LA County supervisor. And so that creates a window of opportunity now that we have a new supervisor that's coming in that may take a fresh look at annexation and the opportunities for us to do that. So I agree that we should, you know, we have many of our other agencies already overlap, whether it be the COC board, Newhall School District, Hart District. It already encompasses the whole valley, so it certainly does make sense for the city to do the same. It just has to make fiscal sense as well.
Thank you. Mr. White?
That's an easy one. In my opening statement, I said that was my top priority, is to annex as much as we can. And it's in the program you have there. It was written, what's your top priority? I think somebody listed 6 items. Well, I had 1 item, and that's the question. Yes. Tying it into something we talked about earlier, connecting the dots. When LAFCO cut the city by half from what we originally wanted when we became a city, after we couldn't become a county, they're the agency that gets to say, yes, you can. And there's an opening with a new supervisor, that's true. But if we connect our own police department, I talked about that earlier, we study it, and it makes sense, or maybe it costs a little more, and we put it to the vote, then LAFCO is going to say, how is the county going to serve these little areas outside of the freeways? And that could be something that has to be looked at. But that could also be something where it's like, wow, LAFCO is going to now say, yeah, we're going to give you all the businesses, give you the marketplace, and become one city, one valley.
Thank you. In all fairness, are we going to need to answer or ask those 2 other questions because we've asked the questions of the other candidates?
I think I don't know, do you want to do a quick and dirty answer kind of thing?
Well, if we can get through these, then you will have an equal opportunity with the other people that have been given this, and the story will represent that. So I think in all fairness to these candidates, I should quickly ask these last 2 questions and now ask you to do it in 30 seconds instead of a minute.
Do they have 30 seconds to write their answers, the other candidates? Do they have to write it in 30
We went to their homes and we supervised that activity.
Okay. Just checking.
Lila, would you ask one of the last 2, and then Martha can ask the final question.
What would you, as a city council person, recommend that the county do to strengthen its firefighting ability? Shall we
Mr.
start
Ferdman.
with Mr. Ferdman? Yeah.
Oh, to strengthen its firefighting ability?
Yes.
Well, I think we need to have a joint command post between all of our organizations. But when you talk about firefighting and fire departments here in Santa Clarita, I think the biggest problem we have is the issue of paramedics and not having enough paramedics across the city to support our community. So if anything, I was going to go to the county and ask him for something, it would be more paramedics around the city.
Thank you, Mr. Keller.
And please, I want you to just repeat your question for me, will you please?
What would you, as a city council person, what would you suggest that the county, or recommend that the county do to strengthen its firefighting abilities in this area?
I will tell you, they're a pretty well organized outfit. They've got a lot of experience, to say the least. When you visited the command post with this most recent fire, the Sand Fire, you got a full appreciation about the mutual aid aspects of our fire agencies. You saw them all, ladies and gentlemen. There had to be at least 50 or 60 cities that had their engine companies here in Santa Clarita with mutual aid. I really am hesitant to try and criticize the fire department. They know how to fight fires. They take their stand at residences, and I will tell you, thank God we had them, because we would have lost a lot more homes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keller.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we need to look at how can we increase our air support. Being such a valley, it's hard for those ground crews to get up there. And so if we can find ways to help with the increasing air support, whether it be with the helicopters or the planes, I think that's something that we should look at. Look, we negotiate. We contract with the county fire. So if we want to spend more money, if we have, we think it's more of a priority, we have the ability to alter our budget, to make that that a priority. I'm sure they'd be happy to increase the air support if we're willing to pay for it. So that's something, again, it's just a budget priority, and if we want to make that one, we can.
Mr. White.
It's a budgetary process, pretty straightforward. You're going to, if you want more services, you're going to pay more money. So
Do you have a particular area that you think that should be?
I've never had a need for the fire department that hasn't been met in the 52 years I've lived out here. We were here in the fire way back when it burned the whole valley, and there were very few homes lost, and that was in 1971, I think. It was the fire, the flood, and the earthquake, the 3 years. It was a fun time. But the fire department's great, and yeah, it's a budgetary process. We look at it and say, if we have citizens saying they want more services, or we see shortcomings in certain areas, then the council would make that decision.
Council member.
I think that the fire department has done a fabulous job. I was very, very impressed during this fire by the amount of resources they were able to tap into. I mean, you say, what could we do? It's possible that we might be able to create an emergency fund that we pay into, so that if there were direct costs that we were somehow not getting our bang for our buck. But quite honestly, the county fire has those resources, and they brought those resources to bear in this fire. So it's one of the areas that I think is working very, very well for the city.
Mr. Champion, I've heard this twice now. We do not contract with the fire department. We live in the LA County Fire District. And so when we talk about mutual aid, it's mutual aid to LA County from other areas. So we just can't arbitrarily go and say, we're going to give you more money. That money that we pay for the fire department is on your property tax bill. It is a Proposition 218 assessment district. It's not a contract.
Thank you for that clarification. Martha.
Okay. I think we're at Mayor Keller again. Do you think there should be more development or less development in the Santa Clarita Valley?
Less. And folks, infrastructure is everything. There's been a lot of comments about development, and justifiably so. Keep in mind that when you go out here and you start building a tract of homes, typically speaking today, you're going to be paying about $85,000 in miscellaneous fees before you ever stick a shovel in the ground to build that single residence. And they go towards B&T fees, and that's bridge and thoroughfare. That's for roads. And there's a whole litany of things, schools, libraries, they go on and on and on that list. I'm out of time already?
Thank you.
I was just getting warmed up.
So I think, honestly, I think we should have additional affordable housing. So if we are going to build more housing, I think it should be affordable. As someone again who I never thought, I didn't realize this till I was a parent, that I would like my kids to be able to live nearby, I never thought of that, but that's important, and it's hard to do, here in Santa Clarita. So I think if we are going to approve more housing, I think it should be more affordable. Otherwise, again, it has to meet all those criteria. That is there enough water? Are there enough park spaces? Are there enough schools that can accommodate that growth?
Question again, please?
Well, I was going to ask you, you said fire, flood, earthquake, you didn't mention locusts.
We haven't had that yet.
Oh, okay. Do you think there should be more development or less development in the Santa Clarita Valley?
In the Santa Clarita Valley, so many have already been approved. So that's part of the annexation. As far as how you're going to, I'm not anti-development. I'm a pro-growth guy. It's contrary, but people want to live here. And you talk about affordable housing, those tend to be higher density, smaller places with more people in them. So that's going to create more. So we need to have smart development in the Santa Clarita Valley.
Mr. Boydston.
Different development, okay? Commercial development and industrial development is what we need, industrial parks and commercial. Look for a huge company to come in and create high-paying jobs in the Whitaker-Burmite area and create one giant campus, but of high-paying jobs, either high-tech or the movie industry, something like that, so people don't have to commute. And when we approve housing, it should be low-density housing, large lots, suburbia, because if we put any more houses in this valley, and we're going to just go into gridlock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ferdman?
Well, I think we should do what we have control over, and we certainly have control over going back and revisiting our general plan and going back to what it was before One Valley, One Vision, reduce the amount of density and increase the requirements for infrastructure to support whatever is built. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to enter that phase where you can wrap it up, address issues that we didn't have a chance to talk to about tonight, or any other issues that come to mind from an extension of your opening statements. That's limited to 2 minutes, am I correct? And Mr. Smythe, you're next up, and I think you can start off your closing statement, if you would, please.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, and I thank certainly the fellow candidates for the debate. And I think it's important, when you're up here talking about your priorities and your goals, it's also just as important to listen to others. And I think that's what we should be doing. And we talked about with the discord at the council meetings. No one council member is going to have all the answers, and you need to be willing to open your mind to those other answers. And if it comes from someone else, that's okay, and you should accept that. And I learned that lesson really early on in my time in the legislature. When you're a member of the minority party and you have a really good idea, somehow magically a member of the majority party takes it, and you get to be a co-author of the idea that you came up with. But what are you going to do about it? Are you going to, am I going to complain and fight against it, or is the goal to have the issue resolved and not have the pride of authorship, so to speak, and take pride in the fact that you're changing policy and affecting policy? I've been asked, probably the question I've been asked most since I announced that I was going to run for city council was really why. You've served on the city council before. You served 2 terms as mayor. You spent 6 years in the legislature. Why do you want to come back to a city council spot? And it's a simple answer. I mean, first I can answer it in the negative of why I'm not running. I am not running because I want to go to Congress, I want to go to the state Senate, or I want to go to another office. If I had wanted to do that, I had opportunities in the last several years. I came back because this is my home. I was born and raised here. I'm raising my family here. My father worked really hard, as well as my mother, to make this community a great place for my brother and I want to do the same for my own kids, because I see them growing up and I see my friends' kids growing up, and it really is critical that we keep Santa Clarita, the great city it is, not just now, but in the future as well, so that all of our kids can be proud to call Santa Clarita home as well.
Thank you.
I love this city. That's real plain and simple. Grew up out here, met my wife here, raised my family here, was educated here. My business is here. I'm just an enthusiastic, positive person that just knows that this city will be even greater than it already is. And people joke about awesome town. It is an awesome town. I'm sorry. There's so much good out here. The schools, the parks, the arts, the youth, or the volunteer, the charities. I mean, you turn any Monday, there's a fundraiser at a golf course. Every Friday and Saturday night, there's a fundraiser for something. This city has a tremendous heart of gold, and gold was found here. There was a gold rush back in the day. And I'm just passionate about it. I think I will bring sound financial judgment, fresh ideas, a fresh perspective, unbridled enthusiasm, without a doubt. I'm laughing, but I'm very enthusiastic. And just make this valley as great as it can be, make it greater than it is, and I really would appreciate your support. I thank you guys all for coming out tonight, fellow council guys, all guys. Appreciate you guys being here. And my campaign website, www.electmarkwhite.com, will be live after Labor Day when I think campaigns should start, and then end on Election Day, hopefully with a victory. Thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you.
First, let me thank all of you for coming out tonight to listen to us when you could be at home watching real entertainment. My family my father came from the Dust Bowl, and he worked in Oxnard picking beans for $2 a day. And he taught the 8 kids in my family that the most important thing we could do would be get an education. Not just a formal education, but an education in life about people. And he taught me that there's a lot of different kinds of people, and they have different beliefs, and they're different ages, and they have different skin colors, but they're people. And Santa Clarita reflects that more and more, and that is a very proud thing for me to see. I've lived here for over 40 years. I served in the Air Force. I served my country for over 4 years. And then I got a couple of college degrees, and then I went and started a couple of different businesses. So I have a lot of background in the private sector. And I've also worked for the government before and recently. And now I work for a nonprofit organization. And that's like working for running a very small business, because if you don't watch the pennies, then you'll go out of business. And every decision that I've made while on the council has to do with that background, and me looking at each and every issue to see if it is the right thing for the people of Santa Clarita from a moral standpoint, and if it's the right thing for the Santa Clarita, if they're getting the best use of their taxpayer money. So each issue, I study the heck out of it. And if you need someone to talk to, you call me, and I will try to help you. That's what I've been doing for 4 years. I hope you'll allow me the honor of serving you for 4 more years. timben.com. God bless you all, and God bless the Santa Clarita Valley.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to also thank you all for coming, and I hope each of you are going to leave tonight with a better understanding of who each of the candidates are and what they stand for. At the same time, I want you to remember that it's just as important that your elected officials hear from you as well, and I hope you'll consider visiting a city council meeting and speaking at the podium and telling those officials what you believe is important. But when you do that, I want you to really contemplate, if we do nothing and we continue down that same old path we've been going, we're going to end up in that same place, and that's gridlock. And with more crime, and we need more opportunity than just doing that. I believe in our community, and I believe in all of you, and I believe that we can take the high road to improve our daily lives. We can turn this situation around if we first admit that there's a problem and go look for a solution. I'm confident that we can correct the general plan relative to density. We can make changes in our city's management structure so that we don't see embezzlements like we did before. We can modernize our city's business systems. We can come up with a real plan to take care of all those outstanding issues of traffic, crime, lack of infrastructure, homelessness, and so much more. Because it's all about you. It's all about us. It's all about our community. Our city council must strive for continuous improvement in everything they do every day in every way to keep Santa Clarita to being a city that we can be proud of. I'll say it again. I'll work tirelessly to provide workable solutions. I believe that I proved myself capable of the task by my record of service to the valley, the city, and the many residents I've assisted. I'm asking you to join me down the path of success, put that mark next to Alan Ferdman, and together we can and we will make a positive difference right here in Santa Clarita. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a phenomenal city. We've been the envy up and down the state of California for so many years, and I am so honored to have been able to be one of the council members during a significant portion of this city's growth and help to make decisions and help to lead this phenomenal city to the success that it is for all of our families. At the same time, I fully realize it's a moving target every day. You must continue to pay attention and do all you can to address the issues that come down the pike. And we haven't seen them all. There will be more. But I am not a naysayer. We have a great city with a AAA rating. We've got a very responsible budget. We've been providing amenities and services to our families because we are a family-oriented city. And we keep that in mind and keep a proper, if you will, thought process here in all of the activities that we have in place for the family, for the children. I have personally been able to lead on a number of things to help this great city and its success, having to do with our veterans, having to do with our Veterans Banner Program, having to do with our Arts Commission, which I pushed with all my might and got it through, right down to In God We Trust on the back wall at the City Council chamber. I'm very, very proud of my participation with this city. I ask for your vote, and I will tell you I am committed to continuing to do all I can for the citizens of Santa Clarita. And I also want to tell you, along with loving the city, I love my wife, and she's right in the front row. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation this evening. More importantly, thank you very much for the way you conducted yourself here today. We've all witnessed over the last number of years the way politicians go at each other and with personal attacks, with lack of facts, making the system in which we are governed by less successful, less effective. This evening, no surprise, I'm sure to many of you, certainly no surprise to me, we are very fortunate to be here in Santa Clarita and have in front of you a slate of individuals who really do love this city, who come from a lot of different backgrounds. It's a very difficult decision I know that you have to make, but I'm glad that you have that difficult decision, and I'm glad that we're the community newspaper here that gets to cover this race. Thank you again for being here. Thank you again for playing by the rules. Thank you for showing the civility to one another. I think it's inspirational, and we certainly appreciate it. So that wraps it up for us this evening. Thank you all for coming. Give these gentlemen a rousing round of applause.
Mr. Collins?